They told me the job was easy money. That's the phrase that got me. I'd been staring at my bank app for a good 10 minutes, watching the numbers like they might change if I glared hard enough. Rent was due in 5 days. My checking account had enough for maybe 2 grocery runs and a pack of off-brand cigarettes. My credit card was maxed out. My phone bill was past due. My boss at the warehouse had cut my hours temporarily, which everyone knew meant until you quit. I was scrolling through job listings at my kitchen table, the laptop balanced on a sticky ring where a beer had sweated itself into the cheap wood. Everything normal either required a degree I didn't have, experience I'd never get, or offered $9 an hour and a cheerful, great culture, which is code for no benefits, and a manager who calls the staff family but won't approve overtime. Then I saw the post. Night shift assistant, cash paid daily, discretion required. No company name, no address, just a city listed and near public transit. The description was 2 lines long. Need reliable person for night shift observation and basic tasks. High pay, minor risks. Not for the faint of heart. Minor risks. I remember snorting at that. Like, what does that even mean? Lifting heavy boxes? Dealing with drunk customers? I'd done worse for less. At the bottom, there was a number with a local area code and a note. Text only. No calls. I should have closed the laptop. I should have looked for something else. I should have at least thought about why they'd write discretion required and what kind of job needed that. But I was tired and broke and hungry in the sort of way that makes your brain shrink down to a single question. Can this get me through next week? So I texted them. Me. Hi. I'm messaging about the night shift assistant job. Is it still available? They responded in less than a minute. Unknown. Name? Age? Do you have ID and clean record? I hesitated. Then I typed the truth. Me. Alex. 27. Yes. To both. Another pause. Maybe 30 seconds. I stared at the ceiling, counting the brown dots where bugs had died stuck to old paint. Unknown. Good. Night work. Midnight to 8 a.m. 400 cash per shift. Paid at end of night. You will be observed. Unknown. Do you have any moral objections to violence? I stared at that line so long my phone dimmed. I reread it, thinking maybe I misread. Moral objections to violence. I thought of what I would normally say if this was a normal world and I was a normal person in it. Something about pacifism or ethics or how I'd prefer a peaceful environment. But that world didn't line up with the one I was in, where my landlord had slipped a yellow notice under my door that afternoon, where I'd eaten dry cereal for dinner 3 nights in a row. My heart was beating way too fast for someone just sitting still. I could have pretended to misunderstand, asked what kind of violence they meant. I didn't. Me. I'm not planning on hurting anyone, if that's what you mean. Unknown. You won't be required to hurt anyone. You are an observer. But this work is not for everyone. Last candidate walked out. Unknown. If you're still interested, can you be at Harbor and 11th tonight at 11:30 p.m.? Harbor and 11th, the old industrial part of town. I pictured empty warehouses, chain link fences, broken bottles kicked into the gutter. I did the math in my head. 400, per night. Even if it was only 3 nights a week. That was more than I'd made at the warehouse, dragging pallets around until my back screamed. My stomach twisted. I told myself it was just from the coffee. Me. I can be there. Unknown. Wear dark clothes. No logos. Bring ID. No phone recording. If you're late, you lose the job. That last bit decided it. It sounded like something an asshole manager would say, and I'd worked for enough of those to know they usually meant there was structure, rules, and probably real money behind them. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't text my sister or my friend Ryan or leave a note. What would I have written anyway? Hey, if I vanish, it's because I went to some sketchy meeting about a job I found in the digital equivalent of a bathroom stall. Instead, I closed the laptop, threw on a black hoodie and black jeans, and stared at myself for a moment in the mirror by the door. I looked pale and tired and older than 27. There was a small zit forming near my hairline. I picked at it until it bled and then wiped it off with my sleeve. Easy money, I told my reflection. Don't be dramatic. Harbor and 11th wasn't as bad as I expected. It was worse in some ways and cleaner in others. There used to be a shipyard there decades ago. Now it was an awkward mix of abandoned loading docks, half-converted art studios, and storage facilities that looked like they housed either stolen goods or rich people's backup furniture. Most of the streetlights worked. The ones that didn't made pockets of darkness that you didn't really want to look into. Any sound, car door slamming, skateboard rattling over cracked pavement, someone laughing too loud, hit harder in the open spaces. I checked the time. 11:26 p.m. I was early. They'd said not to be late, but they never said anything about being early. I stood under a streetlight and tried not to look like a guy waiting for something illegal. I expected a van or a man in a suit or maybe some shady teenager on a bike. Instead, a silver sedan rolled up to the curb, the kind you see everywhere. The rear window slid down. "Alex?" a voice asked. The guy in the back seat looked like an accountant. Dark hair, short and neat, clean-shaven, maybe late 30s, button-up shirt, plain jacket. No tattoos that I could see, no scars. His eyes were the only thing that stood out. Gray, flat, like polished concrete that never showed anything beneath the surface. "Yeah," I said. He leaned forward, glancing at me with this quick, assessing look, like he was measuring my height and weight, and whether I could be a problem. "Get in," he said. "Back seat." I did. The upholstery smelled like someone actually took care of it. There was a faint trace of cologne and something like antiseptic. The driver was a woman in her 40s, hair in a tight bun, eyes fixed on the road like none of this was new. "Phone," the man said, holding out his hand. I felt suddenly like I'd stepped onto a moving walkway, and it was too late to step off. But I unlocked my phone and gave it to him. He put it in a small black pouch, sealed it, and tossed it into the glove compartment. "Why?" I asked. "No recordings," he said. "We already told you that." "You could just tell me not to." "We don't rely on people not to do things," he said. "We rely on controlling the conditions." He said it like he'd said it 100 times. We drove in silence. I tried to count turns in my head, but after the third or fourth, I lost track. The city got less familiar pretty fast. We went past rows of warehouses, a self-storage place with a faded sign, an empty lot with weeds growing taller than a person. chain link fence sagging in the middle. When the car finally turned, it was into a narrow driveway between two mostly dark buildings. At the end of the driveway was a tall gate. The driver tapped something on a small device fixed to the visor, and the gate rumbled open. We drove into a parking lot that had probably once belonged to a decent company. The paint lines were faded, but you could still see where the spots were. Most of them were empty. At the far end was a 3-story building. No sign, no logo. The windows on the upper floors were dark. The ground floor had one lit window and a metal door next to it. The car stopped. "We're here," the man said. My mouth was dry. "So, what is this place?" He looked at me like he was deciding how much to say. "Tonight," he said, "it's your workplace. If the trial goes well, you'll see more of it." Trial? First night is always a trial, for you and for us. He got out of the car. So did I. The air smelled faintly like the sea, and more strongly like oil and dust, and that cold metal smell you get in parking garages. When we got to the door, he entered a code into a keypad. The lock buzzed, and he pushed it open. "After you," he said. Inside it was cooler. The light was fluorescent, humming softly. The hallway was plain, off-white walls, gray floor, no decorations, no reception desk, no sign-in sheet. Somewhere farther inside, something mechanical whirred and then stopped. "Name's Mark," the man said as we walked. "You'll be reporting to me tonight." I almost laughed. "You mean that wasn't you texting me?" He smiled with one corner of his mouth, no real humor in it. "We don't use personal numbers," he said. "The line you texted is monitored. That's all you need to know." We passed 2 closed doors. One had a little sign that just said 1A. The other had no sign at all. We turned a corner, and the hall ended at another metal door. This one had a small camera above it, and a card reader next to the handle. Mark took a card from his pocket, swiped it, and the door clicked. "Before we go in," he said, "I need you to understand a few things." I swallowed. "Okay. Everything you see tonight is confidential. You signed the NDA in the car when you unlocked your phone, whether you realized it or not." I blinked. "What?" He shrugged. "You accepted our terms. That's all that matters. You talk to anyone about this, family, friends, cops. You don't get paid. You also get a visit from people you really don't want to meet. You're not special, Alex. You are not the first we've hired." My heart was pounding again, louder now, thudding in my ears. "And if I just walk out?" I asked. "You're free to leave at any time," he said. "You won't be forced to stay. But the moment you leave the building, you're done. No money, no second chance. And the people I mentioned will assume you're a liability." He watched my face as he said that, his eyes never blinking. "You said minor risks," I said. "I did," he said. "And that was not a lie. The risk to you is minor, as long as you follow instructions. The risk to others, that's not your concern." I realized my hands were clenched into fists and forced them to relax. "What exactly is the job?" I asked. "You watch," he said. "You take notes. You tell me what you see. That's all." "That's all," I repeated. "Yes." He pushed the door open. The room on the other side looked like a security office mixed with a cheap office rental. One long table against the wall with 6 monitors mounted above it, each already on, showing grainy black and white feeds of different rooms. 2 smaller desks behind with chairs and some file boxes stacked sloppily. A clock on the wall, plain, with no logo. A mini fridge in the corner and a water cooler next to it. The air was colder here, on the edge of uncomfortable. "Close the door," Mark said. I did. It shut with a solid sound that made me suddenly aware of how many closed doors we'd passed to get here. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair in front of the monitors. I did. The chair creaked under my weight, familiar in a cheap office furniture way. "Here's the job," he said, stepping up beside me. "These are live feeds from different units on the 2nd and 3rd floors. You will not leave this room without my permission. You will not attempt to access any other part of the building without me. You will not touch anything in here except the notepad and pen on the desk. Understand?" I looked at the notepad. It was yellow, wide-ruled, pen already uncapped next to it. "Okay," I said. He pointed at the screens one by one. "Top left is 2B, top middle is 2C, top right is 2D, bottom row is 3rd floor, 3A, 3B, 3C. Each room is equipped with audio, which you'll hear through this." He tapped a small black speaker tucked under the monitors. "You don't control what you hear. It's all fed to you. You won't be able to mute any of it." The images on the monitors were all similar. Plain rooms with a table and 2 chairs. In some, there were chains bolted to the floor. In others, there was just a metal ring in the center. All were empty for now. "Who uses the rooms?" I asked. "Clients," he said. "Your job is not to know who they are. Your job is to watch and record what happens in as much detail as you can, according to our guidelines." He picked up a folder from the desk and dropped it in front of me. Inside were printed pages, double-sided, dense text. The top page was titled "Observation Protocols." "You can read all that," he said, "or you can let me give you the short version." "I'll take the short version first," I said. "Then I'll read it." He nodded, like that answer pleased him. "You are here as a second pair of eyes," he said. "We maintain recordings of everything, obviously, but cameras miss things. Microphones distort. People have tells that machines don't always catch. You will write down what you see and hear. You will be honest. You will not embellish or interpret. If a person flinches when a door opens, you write, 'Subject flinched when door opened.' You don't write, 'Subject was scared.' No adjectives, no motives, just observed behavior." "Okay," I said slowly. "And who is the subject?" He smiled, small and quick. "It varies," he said. "Tonight you'll see 3 sessions, maybe 4. Each will last anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour. Between sessions you can drink water, use the bathroom, the one across the hall, nowhere else, and review your notes. At the end of the shift, you'll hand me the notes. If they meet our standards, you get paid. If not, you don't." "And if I leave in the middle?" I asked. "Then you leave," he said. "But remember what I told you about liabilities. We don't like loose ends." His tone was flat, no threat in it, which somehow made it worse. "What exactly happens in these sessions?" I asked. He tilted his head, like he was surprised I hadn't guessed yet. "You said you had no moral objections to violence," he said. I said I wasn't planning to hurt anyone. That's not the same thing. He stepped back, checking his watch. One last thing, he said. No matter what you see, you do not interfere. No yelling, no pounding on the glass, no running out there to play hero. Those doors are locked from the outside. You can't get in even if you try. The only thing you'll accomplish is getting yourself reclassified from observer to subject. Are we clear? The room suddenly felt much smaller. Yeah, I said. We're clear. Good, he said. Session 1 starts in 4 minutes. Read the first 2 pages of that packet. He left the room. The door shut behind him with that same solid thud. I was alone with the monitors. The first 2 pages of the protocol were dry. Definitions. Terms. Observer will refer to all individuals visible on screen as Subject 1, Subject 2, etc., in order of appearance. Observer will note timestamps as displayed on monitor, not personal watch. Observer will not attempt to identify subjects by name, accent, clothing brand, or any other personal detail. In other words, I was supposed to pretend everyone in those rooms was interchangeable. I glanced up at the monitors as I flipped the page. The rooms were still empty. The cameras were positioned in the corners near the ceiling, giving a view of each entire space. No windows. Door always in the same place, opposite the camera. White walls, gray floors. The only differences were the furniture and the presence or absence of chains. I told myself this was probably some kind of psychological research. A shady one, sure, but still. Companies tested people's reactions to stuff all the time, shocking them, showing them disturbing images. Kind of fucked up, but not illegal if you got them to sign the right forms. I told myself that until the first door opened. It was the top middle screen, 2C. The door swung inward. 2 men stepped in, dragging a third between them. For a second, I thought the third guy was already dead. His feet dragged, his head lolled. But then he made a noise, a muffled grunt, and I saw the duct tape over his mouth. His hands were bound behind his back with zip ties. There was a dark patch on his shirt near the shoulder, spreading slowly. "Okay," I whispered, without meaning to. The audio came on half a second later, a faint hiss turning into sound. "Put him there," a voice said. Calm. Not quite bored, but close. The 2 men hauling the bound guy moved him to the middle of the room. There was a metal ring set into the floor there. They attached something from his ankle to it, chain or cable, hard to tell in black and white. He swayed on his feet, almost fell. One of them slapped his face lightly. "Hey," the man said. "Up. Eyes open." I realized my own breathing had changed. Shallow. Fast. The third man stepped into the frame, casual, like he was just walking into a conference room. He wore a collared shirt and slacks. No mask. None of them did. It hit me then that they weren't afraid of being recognized, because they didn't think anyone watching this would ever be in a position to recognize them. Subject 1, I wrote, my hand shaking. Male, late 30s, bound, tape over mouth, hands behind back, bleeding from shoulder. My brain automatically went into that detached place it sometimes does when things are too much. It felt like taking notes in school, like if I wrote it down, it became a lesson instead of something real. "Good evening," the man in the collared shirt said to the bound guy. "We have some questions." The way he said questions made the hair on my arms rise. What followed felt both slow and too fast. They cut the tape off the man's mouth. He gasped, sucking in air, coughing. He tried to talk, but it came out as a string of broken words, pleading, explanations, something about kids, about a mistake, about how he didn't know. The man in the collared shirt, subject 2, I wrote, though my brain wanted to call him something else, listened without interrupting. When the bound guy stopped to catch his breath, subject 2 nodded like he'd heard enough. "Here," he said, and held up a photo. The camera angle didn't let me see it. The bound guy did. His face crumpled. "I told you," he said. "I don't..." Subject 2 hit him, open hand across the face. It was fast and precise. The sound of it cracked through the speaker. "Try again," subject 2 said. "We know you were there." There was more talking, more denials, more accusations, names I didn't recognize, dates, places. It didn't take long before subject 2 stopped pretending this was a conversation. The first punch to the stomach bent the man in half. The second knocked the wind out of him so completely he couldn't make a sound at first, just opened his mouth like a fish. The men who'd brought him in, subjects 3 and 4 in my notes, held his shoulders so he couldn't fall. "Stay with us," subject 2 said. "We're just getting started." It wasn't the violence itself that got to me. I mean, it did, obviously. It's not like I was numb. But what really frightened me was the routine of it, the way they moved around him without hurry, the way subject 2 asked questions in the same tone I'd heard managers use when asking if someone had finished their reports. They knew how much force to use to get a response without making him pass out. They slowed down when his speech slurred, sped up when he tried to stay silent. At one point, subject 2 took out a small knife and slid it under the skin of the man's arm, not deep enough to do serious damage, just enough to draw a line of blood. The man screamed. Note facial reaction. I heard myself whispering as I wrote. Subject 1 screams, eyes wide, tears visible. I hated myself a little right then, for doing what they hired me to do, for making myself part of it. It escalated. It always does. The man kept insisting he didn't know whatever it was they wanted him to admit. They didn't believe him. Or maybe they didn't care. Maybe the answers didn't matter. Maybe this was about something else entirely, and the questions were just another tool. At some point, the man stopped talking. He hung from the hands on his shoulders, head forward, blood dripping from his nose, his chin, that cut on his arm. His shirt was stuck to him in places, dark patches spreading. "Give him a break," subject 2 said. "Water." One of the others stepped out of frame, came back with a bottle, poured it over the man's head and into his mouth. Most of it spilled onto the floor. Subject 2 watched, tapping the knife against his leg. He never looked at the camera. None of them did. To them, the camera wasn't a presence. It was just part of the room, like the chain on the floor or the chair in the corner. "Last chance," subject 2 said. "You tell me who else was at that meeting, and this ends quickly. You keep lying, I'll show you how long a night can be." The man's voice was barely audible now. He said a name, then another. His eyes rolled up, then back down, trying to focus. "Better," subject 2 said. "Now we're getting somewhere." The detail that stuck with me from that first session wasn't the blood or the gasps or even the way the man's scream sounded, high and cracked. It was what Subject 2 did when it was over. They got what they wanted, or they decided they had. There was no dramatic moment where the man signed a confession or anything. At some point, Subject 2 just sighed and said, "All right, that's enough." He stepped around behind the man. He put his hand on the man's shoulder like he was about to comfort him. "Thank you for your cooperation," Subject 2 said. Then he took the knife and drew it across the man's throat. Quick, efficient. The same kind of neat movement you'd use to slice tape on a cardboard box. I flinched back from the monitor. My pen slipped and scratched a jagged line across the notepad. The man jerked once, twice. His eyes went wide. His knees buckled. The men holding him let go and stepped back. He collapsed forward, hitting the floor hard. Dark liquid spread out beneath him. In black and white, it looked more like spilled oil than blood. But my brain filled in the color anyway. My stomach twisted. I swallowed hard, tasting bile. The audio picked up a wet, gurgling sound, then nothing. Subject 2 wiped the knife on the dead man's shirt. He checked a watch. "Time?" he asked. One of the others said it aloud. I wrote it down automatically. "Take him to disposal," Subject 2 said. "Prep the room for next subject." They grabbed the man by the arms and legs and dragged him out of frame. A faint streak remained on the floor where his head had been. The door closed. The room was empty again, except for the mess. My chest hurt. I realized I'd been holding my breath. I stared at the monitors, waiting for something, panic, guilt, revulsion, to hit hard enough to make me stand up and walk out. To open that door and demand my phone back and say, "No, this isn't what I signed up for." Instead, I picked up the pen. My hand shook. My writing was sloppy. But I wrote. Subject 1 stops responding at time. Subject 2 moves behind Subject 1, cuts throat in one motion. Subject 1 collapses. No further movement observed. Subject 2 instructs removal of body. That was the moment, looking back, that I realized whatever line I thought I wouldn't cross had already been crossed. Not by them. By me. I stayed. There were 3 sessions that night. I won't pretend I remember every detail. They blur together in some ways and stand out in others, like a nightmare that repeats with small variations. Different rooms, different subjects. Some came in struggling. Some walked in under their own power with hands free, like they thought this was a negotiation. It never was. I saw a woman in a business suit spit in someone's face and get her fingers broken one by one. I saw a kid. He couldn't have been more than 20. Try to bargain with numbers and deals and whatever scraps of information he thought might buy him mercy. It didn't. The first time someone died, I almost threw up. By the third, there was this horrible normalization creeping in. My notes got more organized. I started underlining things like Subject 2 smirks when Subject cries, or Subject 3 flinches slightly when Subject 1 mentions family. I was doing exactly what they wanted, turning it into data. During a 10-minute break between sessions, Mark came back into the room. "How are you holding up?" he asked. I looked at him. He had a coffee in his hand. He hadn't bothered to bring one for me. "You could have told me," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Flat. Tired. "I did," he said. You said violence. You didn't say. I faltered. The word murder felt too big for the room. He nodded at the monitors. The rooms were empty again, cleaned. If I hadn't just seen what they did in there, I'd have thought nothing had ever happened. I told you the risk to you was minor, he said. That's still true. No one in those rooms is here by accident. You kidnapped them, I said. He shrugged. They're brought here by arrangement. That's all you need to know. Are they criminals? I pressed. Did they actually do something? Does that matter? He asked. Yes, I said, sharper than I intended. He sighed, like this was a conversation he'd had before and was bored by it. Some of them did terrible things, he said. Some of them got in the way of people who do important things. All of them are here because someone with more power than them wanted answers or consequences. You are not here to decide whether that's right or wrong. You're here to watch and get paid. I'm not a sociopath, I said. Very few people are, he replied. Most people will do almost anything as long as they don't have to take direct responsibility. That's all we're asking of you. Indirect responsibility. You didn't pick them. You don't touch them. You just observe. The way he said it made it sound so reasonable, like I was being sensitive for even bringing it up. I could go to the police, I said. You could, he agreed. You won't, but you could. Why are you so sure? He took a sip of coffee, watching me over the rim. Because you stayed through 3 sessions, he said. Because you wrote the notes. Because you're going to accept the money at the end of the night. And once you do that, Alex, you're one of us, whether you like it or not. I looked down at my hands. My knuckles were white around the pen. You think a jury would believe you? He went on. Some broke guy with no proof, no recordings, claiming there's a secret facility where bad people are tortured. Your phone never pinged here. The car you rode in is registered to a shell company. This building is leased to someone that doesn't exist. You have nothing. He leaned forward, his eyes suddenly sharp. But let's say they did believe you, he said. Let's say you somehow became an annoying little problem. Do you think the people who pay us for this kind of work would let that problem continue existing? My throat felt tight. I'm not threatening you, he said. I'm explaining the situation. You're in it whether you walk out now or not. The only difference is whether you leave with $400 in your pocket and a job offer, or you leave empty-handed and scared, waiting for a knock on your door at 2 a.m. He checked his watch. Session 4 is about to start, he said. This one is a bit different. Your notes on it are what'll decide whether we keep you. He went to the door, then paused. Oh, he added. One more thing. You might recognize the subject this time. If you do, that's not an accident. He left. The door shut. For a few seconds I just sat there, staring at the empty rooms on the screens. His last sentence echoed in my head. You might recognize the subject. I thought of everyone I knew. My sister, Ryan, my ex, the guy at the bodega who always laughed at my stupid jokes, that old man who fed stray cats behind my building. The door in 3B opened. 2 men stepped in. They were the same type as before. Big, anonymous, wearing plain clothes that didn't draw attention. Between them was a figure in a hoodie, hood up, head bowed. My heart jumped into my throat. They pulled the hood back. For a moment, my brain refused to make sense of what I was seeing. It tried to file the face under stranger, because that would be easier. It was Ryan. He looked older than he had 2 weeks ago when we'd last hung out, but that was just the bruises. One eye swollen, split lip, stubble where he usually shaved clean. His hands were tied in front of him with zip ties. No tape over his mouth yet. My vision tunneled. The edges of the room blurred. All I could see was his face on the screen. Jesus, I muttered. No, 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 no. I stood up without realizing it. The chair scraped back against the floor. On the monitor, one of the men shoved Ryan into the chair in the middle of the room. Ryan stumbled, almost fell, caught himself. He looked around, panic obvious even in grainy black and white. "What is this?" he was saying. "What the fuck is this?" I reached for the door. My hand hit the knob. I remembered Mark's voice. "You do not interfere. You do not leave without permission." I opened the door anyway. The hallway outside was empty. The light seemed harsher now, buzzing louder. "Hey!" I shouted. My voice cracked. "Hey, Mark! I need to talk to you." No answer. On the monitor, the door to 3B opened again. Subject 2 walked in. Same guy as before. Same calm gait. Same collared shirt. He didn't look at the camera. He didn't look around the room. He went straight to Ryan. "Evening," he said. "Ryan, is it?" "That depends," Ryan said, trying for bravado but not pulling it off. "Who's asking?" Subject 2 smiled, small and thin. "I'm the one who's going to ask you some questions," he said. "You're going to answer them. If you do, this ends quickly. If you don't, we're both going to have a very long night." I stood there in the doorway, half in and half out, torn in a way that hurt more than anything I'd seen so far. If I ran down the hall, what would I do? Bang on doors? Scream? Even if someone answered, what then? I had no leverage, no weapon, no plan. But doing nothing felt worse than any of that. My feet took one step into the hall. The speaker under the monitor crackled. "Alex," a voice said. Not from the hallway, from the room, from 3B. Subject 2 was looking directly at the camera now, directly at me. "Alex, this is your reminder," he said. "Do not leave the observation room. Do not interfere." My whole body went cold. He shouldn't have known my name. He shouldn't have known I was standing. I looked up at the corner of the observation room. There was a camera there too. I hadn't noticed it before. I'd been so focused on the monitors. Slowly, like someone else was doing it, I stepped back into the room and let the door swing shut. "Good," Subject 2 said, still watching my camera. "Sit down, Alex. You don't want to miss this." I sank into the chair. Ryan was staring at the ceiling, following Subject 2's gaze. "Who the fuck is Alex?" he asked, voice shaky. "No one you need to worry about," Subject 2 said calmly. "Let's talk about you." The worst thing about that session wasn't the fact that they hurt him. They did, obviously. Subject 2 beat him, methodically, same as the others. He liked using his hands, I noticed. He had a way of angling his wrist that made every punch land just so. Measured, controlled. Ryan tried to crack jokes at first. It's what he did when he was nervous. He called Subject 2 Mr. Clean and made some crack about the room decor. Subject 2 let him talk for a while, like he was giving him rope. "Where were you last Thursday night?" Subject 2 asked. "Hanging out," Ryan said. "Why, did you miss me?" "With whom?" Subject 2 asked. "Your mom," Ryan said. The punch that followed knocked his head sideways so hard I heard the crack through the speaker. Ryan's laugh cut off into a grunt. Blood flew in a small arc from his mouth and dotted the wall. Emotion flooded me in a rush. Rage, fear, guilt. But it had nowhere to go. My hands clenched on the edge of the desk. I thought of getting up again, opening the door, running into the hall, finding something heavy to swing. Anything. But under the rage was something else. Something colder and uglier. The knowledge that Mark had been right. I was already in it. If I did something now, they'd shut me up. They might shut Ryan up faster, just to prove a point. The only thing my interference would guarantee was 2 more bodies in whatever disposal area they used. So I watched. Subject 2 asked Ryan about names I didn't recognize. He asked him about places I'd never heard of, about numbers, about the girl. That part made my throat close. Ryan's older sister had died of an overdose 3 years ago. When Subject 2 said the girl, Ryan flinched like he'd been stabbed. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Tears mixed with blood on his face. "I don't..." Another punch, another question. A pattern formed. My notes, when I shakily looked down at them, were a mess of arrows and underlines and scribbles that made less and less sense. At some point, Subject 2 stepped aside and nodded to one of the big men. "Hold his hand out," he said. The man grabbed Ryan's wrist. Ryan tried to pull back, but he was too tired. His hand shook in the air. Subject 2 took something from his pocket. It caught the light. A small hammer. I hadn't seen it before. "Please," Ryan said. "Please, man. Whatever you think I did, I swear." The first strike landed on his pinky. The sound of bone breaking is distinct. It's not like in movies, all crunchy. It's a sharp crack, more like snapping a thick branch. Ryan's scream was raw and high and real in a way I'd never heard from him before. "Index next," Subject 2 said calmly. "Then ring, then middle. Thumb's best saved for last." I didn't write that down. I should have, according to the protocol. I couldn't. My hand wouldn't move. By the time they got to the thumb, Ryan's voice was hoarse. He was sobbing and gulping air. The front of his shirt was soaked with sweat and tears and blood. His broken fingers jutted at wrong angles. "You brought a gun," Subject 2 said mildly, tapping a dossier I hadn't seen him open. "You thought you'd be the one asking questions tonight." "I don't even own a gun," Ryan sobbed. Subject 2 smiled thinly. "Not anymore," he said. He nodded at the camera again, like he knew I'd caught that and wanted to make sure. That was the worst part, really. Not the blows, not the screams. It was the way he kept acknowledging me. Tiny gestures here and there. A glance at my camera when he twisted Ryan's arm. A small nod in my direction when Ryan said something especially pathetic. He wasn't just torturing my friend. He was performing for me. and I understood on some horrible level that this was the trial Mark had talked about. They'd picked someone I knew to see how I'd react, to see if I'd crack or run or throw myself at the door screaming. I didn't. Every time I thought about getting up, I heard Mark's voice in my head, calm and boring, talking about minor risks and liabilities. Every time I imagined rushing in there, I pictured my sister getting a phone call from some cop who couldn't look her in the eye when he told her my body turned up in a ditch. So I stayed. I watched. I listened. I wrote what I could when my hand cooperated. After an hour, I don't know exactly how long because time had gone stretchy, Subject 2 stepped back. "That's enough," he said. "He's told us what he can." He said it to someone off screen, but we both knew he meant me. Ryan was slumped in the chair, one eye swollen shut, fingers twisted. He was breathing shallowly, like every inhale hurt. "Hey," he mumbled. "Hey, man." Subject 2 leaned down. "Look at me, Ryan," he said. Ryan tried. His good eye rolled around until it settled on Subject 2's face. You'd think there would have been some kind of speech then. And any last words, or a lecture about loyalty. There wasn't. Subject 2 pulled a pistol from a holster at his back. He put it against Ryan's forehead. "Thank you for your cooperation," he said. My vision blurred. For 1 second, I let myself imagine that he'd fire a blank, that this was all some nightmare. The gunshot snapped my head back to reality. Ryan jerked in the chair once. Then he went still. Blood dripped down the side of his face in a slow line. The audio caught the soft thud of his head slumping forward. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the chair. I didn't tear the monitors from the wall. In that moment, I think I hated myself more than I've ever hated anyone. I just sat there. My hand, almost of its own accord, wrote. Subject 1 ceases movement following gunshot to head. No further vocalizations. Blood visible on forehead. Subject 2 appears calm. The room on the screen seemed quieter after that, even though the audio hiss was still there. Subject 2 turned, looking at the camera straight on. "End of trial," he said. "Bring him to disposal. Then bring in our new colleague." He holstered the gun and walked out of frame. My heart stopped for a second, then started again, pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingers. Bring in our new colleague. The door behind me opened. I jumped. My chair rolled a few inches. I turned. Mark stood in the doorway. His expression was the same as when I'd first met him in the car. Mild interest, nothing else. In his hand was a thick envelope. "You did well," he said. "Better than most." I stared past him at the lit hallway and pictured the path to the exit. I could get up. I could run. I could shove him if I had to. He watched my eyes trace the route. "You can leave," he said. "Right now, if that's what you want." "Will you let me?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "We don't keep people here. That's not our business. You walk out that door, you go home, you pretend this was a nightmare. You try to sleep. You fail. You drink maybe. You try not to think about it." His gaze hardened slightly. "But you will think about it," he added. "You will also think about who knows your name now. where your sister lives, where your friend's body will never be found. And you'll wonder, every time a car slows down outside your building, if it's someone coming to clean up a loose end. He held up the envelope. Or, he said, you take this. 400 for tonight. The start of something long-term. You come back tomorrow, and the next night, and the next. And eventually, it won't bother you as much. You'll get better at the notes. You might even move up. Move up to what? I asked. My voice sounded dead. He smiled slightly. Up, he said. That's all you need to know right now. My eyes burned. I realized there were tears there, but they didn't fall. They just sat at the corners of my eyes, making everything blur. You killed my friend, I said. He shrugged. He was never really your friend, Alex. That's not your call to make. No, he said, but it was someone's. Someone with more money than you, more power than you, more to lose than you. That's how the world works. People like you and me, we're just moving parts. You can spend the rest of your life pretending that isn't true, or you can get paid for helping the machine run. He said it like he was describing the weather. I looked at the monitors. 3B was empty now. They'd already dragged Ryan's body out. The floor was smeared with what I tried not to think of as pieces of him. You said this was a trial for me, I said. What about for you? He tilted his head. What if I say no? I asked. What if I walk out and accept whatever comes? He was quiet for a moment. Then my report will say you broke under pressure, he said. That you showed signs of unreliability, that you might talk, and the people who read that report will make their own decisions. And if I say yes, I asked, then my report will say you followed instructions, he said. That you showed restraint, that you're useful. We stared at each other. The envelope felt like it was glowing in my peripheral vision. It was stupid, but I kept thinking about what that money would look like in my hand, how it would feel, real and heavy. I pictured my landlord's face if I showed up with rent and cash, early for once. I pictured a bag of groceries that wasn't just discount ramen and cheap cereal. $400. The price of one night's soul. You put him in there on purpose, I said, to see what I'd do. Yes, he said. If it helps, you were not the only candidate considered. You were simply the most convenient. That doesn't help. I didn't think it would. He stepped closer, holding the envelope out. This is the part where you stop lying to yourself, he said softly. Either you walk away and accept that you're disposable, or you pick a side. There are no clean hands here, Alex. Only people who get paid and people who get hurt. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at that envelope. Time got weird again. My thoughts moved in slow loops. I thought of Ryan, sitting next to me last week on my couch, talking shit about some guy at work. I thought about how he'd laughed when I told him how broke I was, then offered to spot me cash for pizza. I thought about how I'd said, I'll pay you back, and he'd waved it off, like it didn't matter. In a twisted way, I did pay him back. I thought of my sister, who worked 2 jobs and still sent me money sometimes. I thought of the heavy, tired look she got sometimes when she didn't think I was looking. I thought of myself, sitting alone in my apartment, pretending not to see that I was sliding faster and faster toward a place people don't climb out of. Then, without any dramatic realization or inner speech, my hand reached out and took the envelope. It was heavier than I expected. Mark smiled, small and satisfied. "Good choice," he said. "Shift ends in an hour. No more sessions tonight. Take a break, drink some water. We'll go over your notes before you leave." He turned to go. "Mark," I said. He paused. "What happened to the last candidate?" I asked. He looked back at me. "The one you said walked out," I said. "Where is he now?" Mark considered his answer for a moment. "Let's just say," he said slowly, "he's not coming back. But he didn't suffer. We're not cruel without purpose." He left. The door shut. I was alone again, the envelope in my hand, the monitors buzzing softly in front of me. I opened the envelope. It was full of 20s. New, crisp. I counted them twice, fingers numb. 400 exactly. I put it back in the envelope and slid it into the inside pocket of my hoodie. Then I picked up the pen. There were still notes to finish. Here's the part I wish I could say went differently. That I went home, packed a bag, and left town. That I found a way to tell someone. That I became some kind of whistleblower, took them down, freed future Ryans from that room. I didn't. I went back the next night. I told myself it was just until I caught up on rent. Just for a week, maybe 2. Enough to breathe. Enough to buy some time to figure out my life. It's funny how fast, just for a little while, can turn into, this is who you are now. Night 2 was worse in some ways, not because of what I saw, though it wasn't exactly a step up, but because of how I reacted. The first time someone died that night, my heart sped up, sure, but I didn't flinch as hard. My pen didn't shake. My notes were cleaner. By the end of the week, Mark was right. It didn't bother me as much. It still bothered me. I'm not going to pretend I turned into some stone-cold predator overnight. I had nightmares. I woke up sweating and gasping, the image of Ryan's face blown apart lingering behind my eyes. I jumped whenever a car backfired. I found myself scanning faces on the street, half wondering if I'd one day see one of the subjects in a crowd. But each night, when the silver sedan pulled up at Harbor and 11th, I got in. I handed over my phone. I let them seal it in the glove compartment. I walked into that building and sat in that chair and watched people being broken. And I got paid. Within 2 weeks, I paid my landlord in full. He made a joke about robbing a bank. I laughed, a little too loudly. Within a month, I'd paid off my past due bills. I bought actual groceries. I stopped checking my bank app every day because, for the first time in a long time, the number there didn't make my stomach clench. They gave me more responsibilities. Small things at first, double-checking timestamps, revising my notes to highlight behaviors they were interested in. Mark would sit next to me during some sessions, pointing out patterns. "See how he keeps looking at the door?" he'd say. "That's anticipation. Fear mixed with hope. Not the answer we want. Note it." Or, "Watch her breathing. How it changes when he mentions her son. That's leverage. Make sure you underline that." One night he handed me a file before a session. "Read this," he said. "Then watch. Tell me if anything doesn't line up. The file was thick. Background on the subject: a man in his 40s with a laundry list of crimes and shady deals. The file painted him as a monster. Fraud, extortion, credible accusations of worse that were never proven. Photos of victims. Stories clipped from articles. Does it make it easier? I asked, flipping through. What? Mark said. Knowing they did bad things, I said. Does it make this feel justified? He looked at me for a long moment. Does it? For you? He asked. I thought about it. The man's face in the photos irritated me. Something about the smug expression. A little, I admitted. He nodded. Then that's what you use, he said. We each tell ourselves whatever story we need to sleep. For some, it's justice. For others, it's a paycheck. For a few, it's just the job. You'll find your story. What's yours? I asked. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Mine is that if I wasn't doing this, he said, someone worse would be. The first time they asked me to step out of the observation room, it was almost dawn. The sessions for the night were done. The monitors were empty, rooms cleaned and reset. I was finishing my notes, my handwriting smaller now, more efficient. I'd started creating my own shorthand. R for raises voice, F for flinches, arrows to indicate changes. The door opened. A man I'd only seen in passing stepped in. Tall, in his 50s, with the kind of posture you get when you're used to being listened to. His hair was thinning at the temples. He wore a simple black sweater and dark pants. Alex, he said, come with me. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't need to. I stood. My knees popped after hours in the chair. I followed him into the hall. We didn't go toward the exit. We went the other way, past the bathroom I was allowed to use, past the door marked 1A, past 2 unmarked doors. At the end of the hall was a door with a keypad and a card reader. He used both. Inside was a small office. Real office, not like the observation room. Desk, computer, a single framed picture on the wall, some city skyline I didn't recognize. Sit, he said. I did. He sat behind the desk and studied me for a moment. You've been with us for 6 weeks, he said. Yeah, I said. Your notes are good, he said. Better than most. Mark speaks highly of your attention to detail. A strange flicker of pride went through me, immediately followed by disgust. Being praised in this context felt wrong, like getting a gold star for arson. Thank you, I said, because I didn't know what else to say. He folded his hands. Observation is step 1, he said. Some people never move past it. That's fine. We always need eyes. But others, we see potential in them. Potential to take on more direct roles. My mouth went dry. I thought you just needed me to watch, I said. That was the job. That was the first job, he corrected. Tell me, Alex, when you watch the sessions now, what do you feel? I thought carefully. Depends on the person, I said. Sometimes anger, if they did something bad. Sometimes pity. Sometimes nothing. I know that sounds. It sounds normal, he said. You are not here to feel a particular way. You are here to do a job. Emotion is only relevant if it interferes with performance. What are you asking me? I said. He leaned back. We have a subject in holding, he said. He is problematic, uncooperative. He has already been questioned extensively. His continued presence is a risk. But before he is removed, we need one more test. I pictured those rooms. The chain on the floor. The blood that never really washed away completely. What kind of test? I asked. A simple one, he said. We want to know whether you are capable of acting, not just observing. Whether, if called upon, you can carry out a necessary task without hesitation. My heart started pounding again. You want me to go in there? I said. Yes. And do what? He smiled thinly. End the session, he said. Silence stretched between us. You have been part of this process for weeks, he said. You know how it works. You know the stakes. You are not a naive bystander we plucked from the street yesterday. You've seen more people die than most soldiers. He opened a drawer and took out a small object, sliding it across the desk toward me. It was a pistol, compact, black. I'd never held one before, but I'd seen enough in movies to recognize it. There is one round in the chamber, he said. Safety is on. You will be escorted to 2D. The subject will be restrained. There will be no risk to you. You will be observed to ensure the task is completed. Then you will hand the weapon back and return here. I stared at the gun. It didn't look like much. Just metal and plastic. If you put it in a drawer under a pile of receipts, it would look harmless. What if I say no? I asked. He sighed softly. You are very fond of that question, he said. What do you think happens if you say no, Alex? You'll say I'm a liability, I said dully. You'll put me in one of those rooms. He shook his head. Not necessarily, he said. We are not wasteful. If you refuse, you can still be useful as an observer. But your file will reflect hesitation. That will affect how much we trust you, how much access you get, how much certain people worry about what you might do under stress. In other words, I live, I said, but with a target on my back. In other words, he said, you make your life harder, for yourself and potentially for those around you. The mention of those around you was not accidental. They knew who I cared about. They'd proven that. And if I say yes? I asked. Then we update your file accordingly, he said. You become eligible for different kinds of work. More responsibility, more money, more security. More. I looked down at my hands. They were resting on my knees, palms up, like I was waiting to receive something. Who is he? I asked. The subject. He shrugged. Does it matter? It does to me, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. He considered me for a moment. He's a thief, he said finally. He stole from people who do not forgive being stolen from. He has been given multiple chances to rectify his mistake. He has not taken them. At this point, his continued existence is an inconvenience. A thief. I thought of all the times I'd taken small things. A sandwich from the supermarket when I was a teenager. A forgotten umbrella from a restaurant. A little bit of cash from my mom's purse when I was a kid, and thought she'd never notice. Not the same, I told myself. the same at all. "Did you watch his sessions?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "And?" I pressed. "And he is not a good man," he said. "If that helps you. He hurt people who couldn't fight back. For money. And because he liked it." I didn't know if that was true. I had no way of verifying it. But the certainty in his voice was a heavy thing, pushing down on any doubt. I reached out slowly and picked up the gun. It was heavier than it looked. The metal was cool against my skin. I thought of Ryan's head snapping back. I thought of Subject 2's calm voice saying, "Thank you for your cooperation." I thought of myself, sitting in that chair night after night, watching other people's decisions play out on screen. I realized how easy it would be to pretend I had no choice, how easy it would be to tell myself the story that this was always going to happen, with or without me, so my part didn't matter. I stood. "Okay," I said. He nodded, standing as well. "Mark will escort you," he said. "Remember, 1 shot. Do not hesitate. Do not speak to the subject. This is not a conversation. It is a task." We stepped into the hall. Mark was waiting, leaning against the wall like he'd known how this conversation would go. "How are you feeling?" he asked as we walked. "Like I'm about to throw up," I said honestly. "That's normal," he said. "It gets easier." "That's not comforting." "It wasn't meant to be." We stopped outside 2D. The door looked like every other door. If you opened it at noon on a weekday, you might expect to find a conference room inside. A group of people in business casual, arguing about spreadsheets. "Ready?" Mark asked. "No," I said. He opened the door anyway. Inside, the room was lit by the same overhead lights I'd seen 100 times on the monitors. White walls, gray floor, the metal ring in the center. A man was kneeling near it, hands bound behind his back. He looked smaller than I'd expected. Not physically, he was average height, average build, but smaller in the way his shoulders hunched, his head bowed. His clothes were torn in places. His hair was matted with sweat. He looked up when we entered. His face was a ruin of bruises and cuts. One eye swollen shut, a split lip that had scabbed over, then cracked again. There was dried blood and a crust under his nose. But his eyes, one good, one just a slit, were clear. He looked from Mark to me, then down to the gun in my hand. He laughed. It was a short, barked sound, more air than humor. "Of course," he said. His voice was hoarse. "Send the kid." "Subject," Mark said calmly. "This is Alex. He's here to take care of you." "Take care of me," the man repeated, rolling the words around like he was tasting them. "Fancy way of saying you're too scared to do it yourself." Mark didn't rise to the bait. He stepped back to the wall, folding his arms. "Whenever you're ready, Alex," he said. The man looked at me. Really looked, examining my face, my trembling hands, the way I stood too close to the door. "How old are you?" he asked. "Don't speak to him," Mark said. I swallowed. "Doesn't matter," I said. The man snorted. "Everything matters," he said. "That's what your bosses don't tell you. Every little choice, every little step, it all adds up." I tightened my grip on the gun. My fingers felt wrong around it, like they were bent in ways they weren't meant to bend. Please, the man said suddenly, voice dropping. Look at me. I didn't want to. I did anyway. If I wasn't kneeling here right now, he said, if you saw me on the street, would you kill me? I started. Answer the question, he said, sharper. Would you? Some guy walking past you on the sidewalk. Would you pull out a gun and put a bullet in his head? No, I said. It came out harsher than I intended. Exactly, he said. So what's different now? You stole from the wrong people, I said, parroting what I'd been told. He laughed again, bitter. So what? He said. You ever stole something, Alex? Ever taken something that wasn't yours? You think they didn't do worse? Subject, Mark warned. The man ignored him. They tell you I hurt people, he said. They show you files, pictures, make me look like a monster so you don't feel bad when you pull that trigger. My hand shook. Don't listen to him, Mark said quietly. He's had weeks to come up with stories. Hey, Mark, the man said, turning his head as much as his bindings allowed. You tell the kid how much they're paying you to turn him into this? Enough, Mark said. A hint of annoyance crept into his voice. The man smiled faintly. That's the thing about guys like you, he said, looking back at me. You think you're different. I'm just watching. I'm just following orders. I'm just doing a job. He spat on the floor, a red blotch on gray. You're not different, he said. You're just earlier in the process. He shifted as much as his restraints allowed, straightening his back. Look, he said. I get it. You're scared. They've got you by the balls. They probably know where your family lives. They probably killed someone you care about just to see what you'd do. He caught the flicker in my eyes and nodded, like that confirmed something. Yeah, he said softly. Thought so. They're predictable, if nothing else. He took a breath, winced. So here's what's going to happen, he said. You're going to make a choice. Not them. You. You can walk out that door, throw that thing away, and accept that you'll have to live looking over your shoulder. Or you can do what they want, and accept that you'll have to live with that voice in your head that sounds like mine. One way or another, you don't walk out of this room the same guy who walked in. Alex, Mark said quietly, we're done here. Do it. The gun felt fused to my hand. If it helps, the man said, I'm dead either way. They'll just send in someone else if you leave. Maybe he'll enjoy it. Maybe he won't. But it'll happen. The only difference is whether you keep a piece of yourself they haven't bought yet. It was a good speech. Too good, maybe. Part of me wondered if this was another test layered inside the test. If he'd been instructed to say those exact words to see which way I'd lean. You have 10 seconds, Mark said. If you can't do it, I'll call someone who can. The man smiled faintly. Tick-tock, he murmured. My finger tightened on the trigger without my permission. The weight of the gun dragged at my arm. I thought of walking away. I imagined dropping the gun on the floor, hearing it clatter, turning around and leaving. I saw myself pushing past Mark, running down the hallway, through the door, into the cold morning air. I saw the long gray line of the rest of my life stretched out in front of me, always waiting for the sound of a door opening in the middle of the night. I thought of staying, of pulling the trigger, of the sound it would make. of the way the man's body would fall, of Mark's approving nod, of the thicker envelope at the end of the night. I saw the rest of my life stretching out too. But this time the line was stained, step after step, with things I told myself were necessary. The gun was heavy. My arm ached. The man watched me calmly now, as if the choice was already made, and he was just curious to see which path I'd pretend I was pushed down. "I'm sorry," I said. "For what?" he asked. I didn't answer. I turned the gun. Mark swore, a sharp word I'd never heard him use before. My hands shook so badly the barrel wobbled. I pressed it against my own temple. The metal was cold, a shock against my skin. "Alex," Mark said, voice suddenly very carefully controlled. "Put the gun down." The man's eyes widened slightly. "That's one way to go," he said softly. "Bold." My heart hammered so hard it hurt. My breath came in short, jagged bursts. "You told me I don't have a choice," I said to Mark. "That I'm in it either way. That I'm already part of this." "You are," he said. "And killing yourself won't change that. It will only create problems for others." "Good," I said. "Let it." The man laughed, a short, incredulous sound. "Shut up!" Mark snapped at him. He took a step toward me, hands up like he was approaching someone on a ledge. "Think," he said. "This is not a rational act. This is emotion. Fear. We can work with fear. We can protect you. You've already shown you can do this. You stayed. You watched. You took the money. Don't pretend you're some innocent bystander." "I know I'm not," I said. "That's the problem." My finger tightened. "I pull this," I said, "and I stop being useful to you, right?" "Yes," he said, "and you make yourself an example. Do you want your sister to hear that her brother put a bullet in his head in some shitty room because he couldn't handle reality?" The mention of my sister hit harder than anything else he'd said. I pictured her face at my funeral, the way she'd blame herself, the way she'd have to explain it to people. My hand jerked slightly. "Give me the gun," Mark said quietly. "We'll walk out. We'll forget this happened. You'll go home, get some sleep, and tomorrow we'll pretend this was just a bad dream. That's the best offer you're going to get." "Don't," the man on the floor said. His voice was steady now. "Don't give it back." "Shut up," Mark hissed again. "Whatever you do," the man said, "do it because you choose it, not because they told you it's all you have." I stood there, paralyzed, the barrel pressed to my skull, the weight of two lives, mine and his, balanced on the thin curve of my finger. Time stretched. In the end, it wasn't some grand moral realization that decided it. It was a stupid, petty detail. I thought of the guy in the bodega, the way he slid me a free pack of gum sometimes, the way he called me boss, even though I clearly wasn't. I pictured him finding out I was dead. I pictured my sister getting that call. I pictured Ryan's mom, who'd already lost one child, hearing about another young man in her son's circle putting a gun to his own head. I lowered the gun. It felt like dropping something heavy I'd been holding too long. Mark exhaled slowly. "There," he said. "There we go. Rationality returns." He took a step closer. I turned the gun again. This time I pointed it at him. His eyes widened just enough for me to see it. His hands froze mid-reach. The man on the floor laughed again, almost delighted. "Now we're talking," he said. My hand shook so badly the barrel wavered between Mark's chest and shoulder. "You pull that trigger, Alex," Mark said, his voice low and intense. "And your life ends even if you walk out of this room. Do you understand me? They will not stop. They will not forgive. There is no version of events where you get to be the hero and ride off into the sunset. There is only how long you can delay the inevitable." "Maybe," I said, "but I can choose who I go down with." His jaw clenched. "You won't do it," he said. "You've had chances. You're not built for this kind of direct action. You're an observer. That's why we picked you. You like to watch." The way he said "like" made something ugly twist in my gut. "Maybe I'm tired of watching," I said. The gun felt impossibly heavy now. My arm burned. Sweat ran down my temple, mixing with the cold touch of the barrel's ghost. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. "You're going to back up to the wall. Slowly. You're going to open the door. You're going to let me walk out of this building. You're going to tell whoever you answer to that I wasn't worth the trouble." "That's not how this works," he said. "That's exactly how this works," I said. "Right now. Because I'm the one holding the gun. For once." We stared at each other. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He wasn't as calm as he pretended. "Even if I do that," he said slowly, "they'll find you. You know that." "Yes," I said, "but it buys me time. And it means you have to explain how you lost control in here. How some broke guy with no proof got the jump on you. Might be the first time they question if you're worth the paycheck." His eyes flickered, just for a second. Got him, I thought. A long moment stretched. "Back up," I said. He did. Step by careful step, he moved to the wall. He kept his hands where I could see them. When his back hit the concrete, he stopped. "Now open the door," I said. He reached behind him slowly, fingers groping for the handle. "What about him?" he asked, nodding at the man on the floor. I looked down. The man met my gaze. "Don't worry about me, kid," he said. "I was a dead man when they brought me in. You do what you gotta do." There was something like peace in his face. Not joy, not acceptance, just inevitability. "I'm sorry," I said again. "Live long enough to make it matter," he said. "Then we're square." The door clicked as Mark eased it open. "You're making a very big mistake," he said. "I know," I said. "But it's mine." I backed toward the door, gun still trained on him. In the hall, the fluorescent light felt harsher than ever. My head spun. "Turn around," I told him. "Face the wall." He did. I stepped into the hall, still moving backward. When I was clear of the doorway, I slammed the door shut. There was no lock on this side. If he moved fast, he could open it again immediately. I didn't give him the chance. I ran. I don't know exactly how I made it out of the building. The hallways blurred together, doors, keypads, that humming sound of electricity in the walls. Somewhere behind me, a shout went up. I heard it faintly at first, then louder. "He's loose. Stop him." Adrenaline drowned out everything else. I hit the main corridor and sprinted for the door I knew led to the parking lot. The gun thumped against my side. I thought briefly about ditching it, but my fingers wouldn't unclench. The metal door at the end of the hall loomed closer. I slammed into it, shoulder first. It burst open. Cold air hit my face like a slap. The sky was going gray with dawn. The parking lot was mostly empty. The silver sedan was there, along with 2 other cars I didn't recognize. For one brief, insane second, I thought about trying to steal one. Then I remembered the gate. I ran. My legs burned. My lungs felt like they were tearing. The gravel crunched under my shoes, loud in the quiet morning. Behind me, the door banged open again. "Alex," a voice shouted. "Mark, stop." I didn't. I reached the gate. It towered above me, chain link and metal, topped with barbed wire. There was no chance of climbing it before someone reached me. There was a small access panel next to it. A keypad, same as at the doors inside. I stared at it for half a heartbeat, hopelessness washing over me. Then I saw the small black box mounted above it. The camera. "Everything is controlled from somewhere," I heard Mark say in my head. "We don't rely on people not to do things. We rely on controlling the conditions." I looked down at the gun. Then I pointed it at the camera and fired. The recoil slammed into my hand. The shot echoed across the empty lot. The camera sparked, a little pop of broken electronics. The bullet punched through it and into the wall behind. For a second, nothing happened. Then the gate shuddered. The mechanism whined. It started to roll open. Of course they had fail-safes. Of course they did. If the system was damaged, the gate had to unlock in case of fire or some other emergency. Safety regulations. Even monsters had to obey building codes. "Stop!" Mark shouted again, closer now. The opening was narrow, just enough for a person to squeeze through sideways. I didn't wait for it to open all the way. I threw myself at the gap, scraping my shoulder on metal, tearing my hoodie. For a horrible second, I thought I'd get stuck. Then I was through, stumbling, catching myself on cracked pavement. Behind me, footsteps pounded. I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was several blocks away, lungs on fire, vision spotted with black. I ducked into an alley between 2 warehouses and collapsed behind a dumpster, my back against the cold brick. Only then did I realize I'd dropped the gun. Somewhere between the gate and here, my hand had let go. The thought sent a small thrill of panic through me, then a wave of relief. Let them have it, I thought. Let them pick it up and wonder what else I'd drop. You probably expect me to say I went straight to the police. I didn't. I know how that sounds. Cowardly, complicit. Pick your word. But you have to understand, I had nothing. No recordings, no photos, no physical proof. My phone had been in their possession every time I was in that building. The envelopes of cash were all I had to show for any of it, and those just made me look guilty. If I went to the cops, at best, they'd think I was insane. At worst, they'd listen very carefully, take notes, and make a call to someone high up on a list that had my name on it. So I did what scared people do. I disappeared. Not in a dramatic movie way. No fake passports or burner phones. I took what cash I had, every envelope, every crumpled bill stuffed into shoeboxes and under my mattress, and I left town. I left a note for my sister. I told her I'd gotten a job out of state, that I was sorry, that I'd be in touch when I could. I lied through my teeth because telling her even one true thing would have put her in danger. I bought a bus ticket to a city I'd only ever seen on maps. I paid in cash. I kept my hood up. I flinched every time someone looked at me for more than a second. On the bus, I sat by the window and watched my city slide away. The warehouses, the cranes at the port, the skyline jagged against a pale morning sky. I thought about Ryan, about the man in 2D, about Subject 2 and his calm hands. I thought about the fact that somewhere in that building there was likely a file with my name on it, full of notes just like the ones I'd written about other people. Subject shows hesitation under pressure. Subject responds strongly to mentions of family. Subject is susceptible to financial incentives. I thought about Mark, standing in that room, explaining to someone why he'd let me walk out. I thought about how far their reach went. For a while, I told myself I was safe, that I'd slipped through a crack in their system, that they'd cut their losses and focus on people who were easier to control. Then, one night, in a cheap motel 2 states over, I turned on the TV. I was flipping channels, not really watching, just needing noise. A local news segment caught my eye. Grainy footage of a building on fire, thick smoke, flames licking out of second-floor windows. The anchor's voice droned over it. Industrial building on Harbor and 11th collapsed early this morning after what officials are calling a contained chemical explosion. No casualties have been reported. The building was believed to be vacant at the time. Harbor and 11th. They burned it down. Of course they did. I'd compromised the site, shot the camera, pulled a gun on one of their people. Whether they found me or not, that building was no longer clean. They didn't show any bodies pulled from the rubble. No stretchers, no ambulances, just fire trucks and police tape and a statement from some city official about zoning violations. I stared at the screen until the image blurred. I don't know how many people burned in that building. I don't know if the man in 2D was still alive when the fire started, or if they took care of him before they lit the match. I don't know if Subject 2 was there, his careful hands turning valves and setting charges, or if he was already somewhere else, starting over. I turned the TV off. In the silence, I realized something that made my skin crawl. They didn't need the building. The building was just a container. They still had the money, the connections, the clients who wanted questions answered and problems removed. They still had people like Subject 2 and Mark. They still had their files and their procedures and their belief that the world was divided into those who paid and those who suffered. And they still had my name. People like to think you can just walk away from something like that. That if you get physically clear of the danger, the rest follows. That you wake up one day and it feels like a bad dream. It doesn't. I got a job washing dishes at a diner under a fake last name, paid in cash, no questions asked. I rented a room above a bar. The walls were thin, and the bed sagged in the middle, but the door locked and the window overlooked an alley instead of a street. For a while, I jumped at every sound in the hallway. Every knock at someone else's door made my heart skip. Every time a car idled outside longer than made sense, I pictured a silver sedan. But days passed. Weeks. No one came. The human brain is a treacherous thing. It can get used to almost anything. The constant edge of panic feeling dulled. I started noticing small things again. The way the morning light slanted through the greasy diner windows. The way the cook hummed the same tune every day without noticing. The way the regulars always ordered the same thing. On my nights off, I sat in my room and tried not to think about Harbor and 11th. I failed, obviously. My thoughts would drift back there, to that humming fluorescent light and those grainy monitors. I tried to write it all down once, not as clinical notes, but from my perspective. A confession, I guess, or a record, in case someone ever found it. What you're reading now is what's left of that attempt. I burned the first draft in the bathroom sink. Paranoia won out. Every sheet of paper with my handwriting on it felt like a target. But I couldn't keep it all inside. It needed somewhere to go. Even if that somewhere was just another stack of pages I'd eventually destroy. So I wrote again. I left out some details, names, specifics, things that would make it too easy to trace. I changed a few bits here and there. Not to protect myself, but to protect the people who never got a choice in any of this. I tell myself that if they ever come for me, and I don't kid myself, that's still on the table. Someone might find this. Some landlord cleaning out a room. Some distant cousin going through my things. Maybe they'll read it and think it's a story. Just a scary tale some guy made up about a shady job offer. The kind you tell yourself at night to get a little thrill. Maybe they'll believe it. Maybe they won't. The part that scares me most now isn't the memory of the rooms or the sound of the gunshots. It's how easy it was for them to find me in the first place. They knew my name, my debts, my family. They knew I was desperate enough to text a number under a sketchy ad, to get into a stranger's car, to walk into a building with no sign. They didn't pick me at random. They picked me because there are a lot of people like me. Tired, broke, hungry in that way that makes your world shrink to the size of a single question. Can this get me through next week? They're still out there. Not in that building. They burned that one down. But somewhere else. Another warehouse. Another vacant industrial space. Different cameras. Different rooms. Same machine. They still need observers. They still need people willing to sit in a chair and turn suffering into data. They still need people who'll take the envelope at the end of the night and tell themselves they didn't really have a choice. Every time I see a job posting now, night work, high pay, discretion required, my hands start to shake. There's always one. Sometimes it's buried on page 5. Sometimes it's on a different site entirely. Sometimes it's worded a little differently. But it's there. Maybe it's not them. Maybe it is. People ask sometimes, in stupid bar conversations or online threads, what's the scariest thing that's ever happened to you? They share ghost stories and weird coincidences and bad trips. They laugh. They say things like, "Man, if that happened to me, I'd be traumatized." I never tell mine. Not because I'm scared they'll think I'm crazy, though they would, but because I'm scared of the opposite. I'm scared someone will hear it and nod and say, "Yeah, I got an offer like that once. I almost took it. I don't have a neat way to end this. No lesson. No reassurance that you can be smart enough or moral enough to avoid ending up where I did. All I have is this. If you're ever hungry enough, or broke enough, or angry enough, that an anonymous offer of easy money sounds like an answer, read this again. Remember that the people making those offers are counting on that hunger, that they're not looking for heroes or villains. They're looking for observers, for people who'll sit and watch and write it all down and tell themselves it's not their fault. They're very good at finding them. They were very good at finding me. You might think you're different. So did I.